Welcome to Crimson Clues, where shadows hide secrets and silence reveals the truth. Every story is a puzzle, and every clue takes you closer to the answer. Subscribe now, join the hunt, and let the mystery begin. Chapter 1. The voyage begins. The SS Atlantica is described as a triumph of elegance and engineering. The enormous ballroom features crystal chandeliers, polished brass rails, and mahogany paneling. Passengers dressed in silks and tuxedos gathered under the sumptuous glow, with laughing and champagne glasses filling the air. It was a vision of unfettered luxury, a floating microcosm of wealth and ambition. A little man with a meticulously maintained moustache sat at a table on the edge of the room and surveyed the sight. Hercule Poirot, a well-known Belgian investigator, sought a rare moment of relaxation on his voyage. However, he found it difficult to rest as he was keenly aware of the subtleties of human behavior, such as the tilt of a head or a smile. At the captain's table, Lady Vanessa Worthington held court with the poise of a queen, her emerald silk gown shimmering and her pearls catching the light like tiny moons. Sitting beside her was her husband, Sir Reginald Worthington, whose broad shoulders and easy charm disguised a certain restlessness. Pooh saw a subtle tremor in Reginald's hand when lifting his wineglass, a detail that most people would miss. Clarence Harrow, Vanessa's business partner, let out a boisterous laugh, his stout frame quivering with effort. Lady Eleanor Fairfax, a rival socialite, sat with a rigid posture, her gaze fixed on Vanessa with venom. Poirot leaned back slightly, intrigued by the threads of rivalry or resentment that had woven their lives together that evening. Vanessa addressed Reginald in a steely tone, emphasizing the impossibility of the situation. She urged Reginald not to push her. Reginald Clarence summoned a waiter with a flick of his wrist and drew close to Vanessa to discuss the agreement. He argued there was still time to change the terms, but Vanessa responded coldly. "My mind is made up." Clarence accepted it. She turned away, leaving him to grin despite his obvious annoyance. Pooh's focus switched. As Lady Eleanor approached Vanessa. Her comments were filled with sugary venom. "Vanessa, how lovely to see you. I heard about your little spat with Reginald. A pity." Vanessa's smile was a brittle facade. "Eleanor, you are so thoughtful, and your concern is touching." The interaction was rich with unsaid history. Pooh witnessed a match of wits as the captain approached Poirot with a booming chuckle and a friendly greeting. "We appreciate having you aboard, and hope you are enjoying the Atlantica." Poirot inclined his head, his grin pleasant yet restrained. "The ship is wonderful, but I sense a certain undercurrent among your visitors." The captain's joviality broke slightly as he dismissed the society folk with a dismissive wave. "Intrigue is constantly brewing." Poirot nodded doubtful, his mind already processing the evening's impressions while enjoying his coffee. Poirot captured a fleeting moment that piqued his curiosity. A waiter discreetly slipped a folded note to a passenger at a far table. The man quickly pocketed it, his eyes scanning the room. Vanessa excused herself, gliding past Poe's table. A hint of jasmine perfume trailed her, accompanied by an odd metallic note that lingered in his senses. He frowned slightly and stored the observation as the lights dimmed and a Chantos TA young pair exchanged admiring looks. An elderly man nodded off over his brandy, while a lone figure peered over a newspaper. Was this the rumored stowaway or another piece in the puzzle? As the night ended, Pooh retired to his stateroom, the ship's gentle sway serving as a backdrop for his reflections. The SS Atlantica, isolated on the huge ocean, was a perfect crucible for secrets to stew. While halting in the passageway, Hercule felt he heard a faint footfall behind him. However, the passage was empty. Despite the fact that it was a holiday, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right in his cabin. Poirot stood by the porthole, gazing at the endless sea. The passengers on the SS Atlantica carried hidden motives that would unravel in the days ahead. The morning sun bathed the ship in a golden glow, casting rays across the endless Atlantic. Inside the grand dining room, passengers savored their coffee and conversed politely. Jenkins, a first-class steward, knocked gently on Lady Vanessa Worthington's stateroom door. She had requested her breakfast tray at this hour, and was known for her punctuality. There was no response, so Jenkins felt uneasy. Mady Jenkins inquired about Ma'am's breakfast, but there was no response. He turned the handle with hesitation. The door slid open unlocked, and he stepped inside. Vanessa lay stretched across the bed, her emerald gown tangled around her legs, her face hideously white, and a silk scarf wound securely around her neck. Her wide, unseeing eyes stared upwards. Frozen in a quiet plea, Jenkins staggered back, the tray slipping from his hands and crashing to the floor. Captain Harrow stood framed in the doorway, his weathered face paling as he absorbed the scene. His trembling hands betrayed him as he reached for the intercom. "Get me Hercule." Poe entered with his normal briskness and quiet authority. His quick eyes swept the room, cataloguing every aspect, even the toppled chair and smashed VAs on the floor. The scent of jasmine lingered in the air, and a story of violence unfolded before him. He approached the bed, studying the scarf's cruel grip and the bruises beneath it. She resisted, but the killer was swift. Captain Harrow shifted uncomfortably behind him, wondering who could have done it. "We are days away from the shore, and there is a murderer on board." Poe raised his palm for stillness, focusing on a slip of paper on top of the dresser. He carefully lifted it and noted the fine yet hasty script. The handwriting on the note, "You can't hide forever," matched Vanessa's, but he couldn't be sure if it was a threat or a message for another PUO. He tucked the note into his pocket and shifted his gaze to the slightly ajar porthole, which offered a view of the vast sea. He pondered why he left it open when the night was cool. Dr. Finch, the ship's medic, rushed in to examine the body. After a brief examination, he raised his expression of strangulation without inquiry. The death occurred between 11 a.m. and 1 a.m., according to Poole. He recalls a faint sound of footsteps near midnight and a shadowy figure in the corridor. When asked if the door was locked when he arrived, Jenkins replied that it was unlocked. Lady Vanessa, who is said to always lock her door at night, heard a cry before Hargrove could respond. "I sympathize with his hard yet soft grip, but please refrain from disturbing the scene." Sir Reginald dropped into a chair with his head in his hands, his voice a broken murmur. Despite the absence of tears, the news of the murder travelled quickly, drawing passengers to the dining room. Clarence Harrow grasped his coffee cup. Lady Elena Fairfax fell into her seat, her attention fixed on the young couple huddled together at dinner. An older gentleman whispered, as he tapped his fingers on his armrest before leaving the stateroom. Poe noticed a faint footprint on the carpet near the door, which was too small for a man's shoe and too big for Lady Vanessa's slippers. He closed the door behind himself after going into the corridor, possibly using a clever trick or a woman's heel. Hercule Poirot thrived on puzzles like the note, portholed cigarette, and footprint. He believed that with time and observation, the truth would emerge. Chapter 3. The First Suspicions. The captain of the SS Atlantica, Hercule Poirot, sat in his private office with a little notebook and a keen look on Sir Reginald Worthington. As the ship sailed over the turbulent Atlantic, the grieving widower claimed his tailored suit was flawless, but his hands trembled as he clutched a handkerchief. Sir Reginald asked, "Who could have done this to my Vanessa?" His voice was raspy with effort. Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching faintly, and asked Sir Reginald when he last saw Madame alive after dinner yesterday night. Sir Reginald responded by pressing a handkerchief to his eyes, which Poirot observed with curiosity. She was tired and wanted to retire, so I waited in the saloon for a brandy with Clarence Harrow. Vanessa never liked late evenings, and you didn't check on her before you slept. Pooh's tone was gentle and probing, and I figured she was resting. When I returned to our suite, the door was closed. Sir Reginald hesitated and explained that she often locked her door for solitude. Pooh's pencil scratched a brief notation on a locked door, consistent with his earlier assessment of the crime scene. "You heard nothing," Sir Reginald remarked. "No cry, no sound of distress," with a stern voice and a fleeting glance to the floor. Curia Poirot observed the man's polished and controlled demeanor and nodded politely. Clarence Harrow, Vanessa's business partner, entered with a confident demeanor, despite a fresh bandage wrapped around his left hand. The white GW stood out against his dark suit, prompting a smirk before he masked it with a somber frown. Harrow sat in the chair and remarked on Vanessa's sharpness. Despite not always seeing eye to eye, he admired her. He shrugged, his bandaged hand resting on the armrest. She pushed for risky ventures, new shipping routes, unproven markets. I liked stability, which we discussed before dinner. After dinner, I had a drink with Sir Reginald before retiring at 11 p.m. Poirot mentioned not seeing Vanessa after she left the dining area, noting a faint sound of footfall about midnight. Harrow responded that he had not heard anything peculiar. Poirot noticed a clench in the man's jaw, possibly indicating that the third interviewee was Lady Eleanor Fairfax. Vanessa's adversary entered with a lavender smell and a silk scarf draped over her shoulders, resembling the murder weapon. Poe took her seat, trembling with indignation. "Vanessa and I had our quarrels, but murder is beyond comprehension. She snatched a lucrative contract from me last year," Eleanor said bitterly. "I won't deny I resented her, but I didn't want her dead. Madam, I played cards in the lounge with Mrs. Pennington until— I've owned mine for years," Poirot answered with a placid smile. After she went, Poirot sat in silence, his thoughts arranging the puzzle pieces. Sir Reginald's tearless anguish was convenient. Alibi Harrow's business friction. Feeling uneasy and with a bandaged hand. Lady Elena's scarf and lingering grudge both had motives and opportunities, but the chambers provided clues. The scrolled notes the symptoms of struggle. As Poirot stepped out of the captain's office, he paused in the corridor, sifting through the suspect's words. A soft murmur drew his attention to the nearby lounge, where Lady Eleanor Fairfax sat, her composure fraying. She dabbed her eyes with a delicate handkerchief, then let it slip to the floor in a moment of distraction. Clarence Harrow, who had been lingering by the bar, moved quickly and bent to Ret Quo's eyes narrowed slightly. But he didn't say anything. His concentration was interrupted when the captain stepped in front of him. "Jenkins, the steward, insists on speaking with you and claims to have recalled anything." Jenkins appeared with a cap in hand, nervously twisting the brim. He mentioned seeing a strange man outside Lady Vanessa's cabin around midnight. His face was obscured by shadows, but he was smoking. When he saw me, he dropped his cigarette and ran away. When Pooh's pulse accelerated, "Did you keep the cigarette?" Jenkins nodded and removed a crumpled stub from his pocket. He noticed the gold band encircling the filter, which he had seen in Clarence Harrow's silver case. "Trey and Jenkins, you have been very helpful alone again." Poe leaned back, humming the midnight figure, cigarette and scarf, all threads in a cunning weave. The killer was shrewd, but not infallible aboard this floating prison. The truth crouched, waiting to be seized. Hercule Poirot would unravel it strand by strand in Chapter 4, A Hidden Truth. The midday sun illuminated Lady Vanessa Worthington's stateroom, putting a golden glow over the previous night's tragedy. Hercule Poirot stood by the elegant dresser, meticulously inspecting each thing with the precision of a watchmaker. Captain Harrow expressed concern as he waited near the doorway, wondering if the killer had left anything behind. "Perce," the captain inquired in a low voice. Poe's eyes twinkled as he looked up. "Mon ami, the criminal mind is brilliant but not flawless. There is always a trace." A whisper of truth. He stroked his fingers along the velvet lining of Vanessa's jewelry box, which held glittering treasures. Unaffected by pandemonium, with a kind touch. When Poirot pressed the bass, a faint click resonated across the room. A false bottom opened, displaying a folded letter and a small photograph. "Voilà," Poirot sighed, his moustache twitching with enjoyment. Captain Harrow approached Poe and carefully unfolded the letter. The handwriting was sharp and elegant, and the message was brief. "Pay what you owe or the world will know your shame." The letter was unsigned. The paper crisp as if newly scrawled. Poe's brow furrowed as he studied the script, which appeared to be Vanessa's own handwriting. He wondered if the phrasing was ambiguous, and if it was a demand she received or made. He tucked the letter into his pocket and resolved to investigate further. He noticed a photograph of Vanessa standing beside a man in a dimly lit room. Poirot responded, his mind racing. "Perhaps the letter's issue requires caution. Captain, this secret may be the key to her murder." Shai slipped the photos and note into his pocket, leaving the stateroom with a serious expression. The killer should not be aware of what was discovered. Poe noticed a faint footprint near the door, which was too small for a man's shoe and too large for a lady. Vanessa's slippers, like a woman's heel, may have been a deliberate diversion by the killer to shift the focus of suspicion. He considered many solutions for the case in the ship's lounge. Perce discreetly asked for a list of female passengers and crew members. Among the names, one stuck out, Elena Fairfax. Her rivalry with Vanessa was well known, and her shoe size matched the print. However, other possibilities were the ship's head stewardess and a young bride. Poirot tapped his pencil against the list he wanted later while strolling the deck. Pooh's keen eyes caught a glimpse of Lady Eleanor in a secluded corner. Her voice was quiet but intense as she spoke to Sir Reginald Worthington. Their postures were strained. Lady Elena screamed and gripped Sir Reginald's sleeve. Sir Reginald's expression was frustrated. The plot thickens as Eleanor Poirot investigates the horizon, but their voices drop to whispers. They part ways with a sharp glance, each disappearing down their own corridor. Poirot mused, stroking his moustache. What links these two, a shared secret or something more? As Sinister returned to his cabin, Poirot poured himself a tisane. As he sat in his armchair, steam curled in the air. His brain was active, processing the day's revelations. Sir Reginald sipped his tea and narrowed his eyes as he reflected on the ambiguous letter, photograph, footprint, and clandestine meeting between Lady Eleanor and Sir Reginald. Lady Vanessa had enemies and secrets that others wanted to keep hidden. The question remains, which secret cost her her life? The letter suggests a motive rooted in shame or scandal, but its authorship is unclear. The photograph suggests a personal betrayal, possibly an affair that threatened reputations or fortunes. The footprint could be Lady Eleanor's, or a clever ruse to cast suspicion elsewhere. Pooh sat down with his cup, his determination strengthening. He murmured gently, "Poirot will uncover the truth thread by thread." As the ship sailed into the gathering dusk, the mystery grew as the killer's shadows lengthened, possibly closer than anybody thought. Poirot recognized the urgency of the situation. Chapter 5. The SS Atlantica's Grand Lounge exuded opulence, with velvet drapes enclosing the massive dark windows that reflected the restless Atlantic. Beyond chandeliers casts a golden glow. The death of Lady Vanessa Worthington created a sense of anxiety among the passengers, with every gaze evoking suspicion and accusations. Hercule Poirot sat in a soft armchair by the crackling fireplace with his tiny physique. Mr. Pennington, an old traveller with a drooping monocle, was dwarfed by the sumptuous surroundings and clutched a blazing tan. A young wedding couple spoke anxiously on a sofa, while Miss Clara slept near the bar. The head stewardess moved between tables. Her motions were accurate, but her look indicated that she had been on duty for some time. In the aftermath of Lady Vanessa's death, he noticed a footprint in the suite that matched her shoe size, which he found intriguing but not conclusive. Miss Clara approached. Miss Poirot asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Her voice was calm, but her fingers twisted nervously. Poirot gave a disarming smile. "You are very attentive, mademoiselle. Clara informed me on the night of the catastrophe. Did you notice anything out of place, such as a sound or shadow?" Her lips were squeezed into a narrow line. "I was preoccupied with the linen, but she hesitated and leaned in. Around midnight, I heard a door bang near the first-class suites, followed by a faint cry. I wasn't sure whether it was real." Pooh's eyes lit up as he heard a yell from Lady Vanessa's stateroom. She fidgeted with her apron, but given the ship's creaks and groans throughout the night, it could be nothing. Mary Maddle. In the ship's library, Poirot summoned Mr. Clarence Harrow to the sanctuary of dark wood and leather-bound volumes. Despite a slammed door and details matching the timeline of the murder, it was unclear who was in the corridor that evening. Harrow sunk into a chair across from Poirot, his confidence tinted with displeasure. Poirot saw the bandage on Harrow's left hand, which he had seen at their previous encounter after a little skirmish. "I hope this is brief, Em." Poor Harrow said, crossing his arms, "I've affairs to attend to." Poirot's smile was serene, but his tone carried an edge even amidst murder business calls. "You are a guy of focus mure." Harrow shifted uncomfortably, his banded hand lying on the armrest. "Although Vanessa's death is sad, I must continue to live. Poirot told me about his quarrel with Lady Vanessa the night before her death, about a dangerous investment." Harrow's eyes widened briefly before narrowing. "She wanted to sponsor an enterprise which I considered ridiculous. We exchanged words, nothing more." Pooh's voice sharpened, but the venture was risky and may have been disastrous if not successful. Harrow's cheeks heated, and he grimaced slightly as he grabbed the chair's arm with his damaged hand. "What are you suggesting?" "I didn't kill her. I was in the saloon until 11 p.m. Then I went to my cabin alone." Poirot's gaze was fixed on Harrow's clenched jaw, but a knock broke the tension. The door opened, revealing Mr. Jenkins, the purser. "Ashen M. Pooh." Jenkins showed Rose a Muir in a shadowed corridor near the first-class suites. He was checking supplies when he noticed a faint smudge and a partial handprint on the wall. Poirot bent to inspect it, his eyes narrowing, and traces of powder makeup on the wall, possibly from a woman's touch. Jenkins nodded and produced a small handkerchief with delicate embroidery that was stained with blood. Poirot believed Lady Eleanor Fairfax's initials, E.F., shone in gold thread. Poirot took the cloth, recalling a scene in the lounge where Harrow had pocketed the handkerchief after Lady Elena dropped it during a casual interchange. Jenkins swallowed. "I thought you'd want to know, sir. You were right." As Jenkins left, Poe said that this could hold the key to solving the mystery. Poirot pocketed a handkerchief with evidence of Lady Elena's presence near the crime site. However, he wondered if she was the killer or a pawn in a wider game, and how her handkerchief ended there in bear's blood. Harrow's blood may have returned to his cabin. He stood in front of the porthole, gazing out at the limitless ocean. Miss Clara testified. Harrow reflected over his weak alibi, bandaged hand, and Lady Eleanor's handkerchief. The parts were dispersed and refused to connect. He paused and stared into the night. The murderer is cunning but not immaculate, with traces of missteps. Vanessa's jewelry box revealed a snapshot of a man in a cafe wearing a lion's head cufflink. She wondered if he was a board member or a spectre from her past. Poirot stated, "The truth is here on this ship, and I am determined to uncover it." He extinguished the lamp and the blackness cloaked him. The mystery's whispers persisted in Chapter 6. The lower decks of the SS Atlantica were a sharp contrast to the splendor above in the cargo hold. The air was thick with the tang of oil and sea salt, and the ship's metal walls groaned faintly with the rhythm of the ocean. Hercule Poirot descended the narrow staircase, his polished shoes clicking sharply, accompanied by Captain Harrow and two burly crewmen. A kitchen hand's hushed tip had led them here to the shadowed corners where a stowaway reportedly hid. A sudden rustle broke the stillness as they approached a cluster of crates. Pooh raised a hand, signaling silence at his nod. The crewman pulled a figure. From the gloom, a young man, clothes, rumpled face smudged with dirt, eyes darting nervously. Poirot answered calmly, "There is no need for fear. I am Hercule." The young man gulped hard and sought only the truth about his name. Sir Thomas Wilkins, what brings you aboard this ship?" "Uninvited, Miss Wilkins. I was desperate." Thomas mumbled, "I lost my job in London and had no idea where to go. I thought I'd sneak to America and start over." The boy's hands trembled, but his gaze remained steady, a blend of terror and determination. "Do you know what happened to Lady Vanessa Worthington?" Thomas paled at the murder. "I heard the team chatting, but I promise I am innocent." Pooh responded in a firm yet polite tone, asking whether you witnessed anything that night that could help my investigation. After a pause, Thomas nodded slowly. "I was on the promenade deck at midnight and noticed a hooded figure in a dark coat hurry from the first-class cabins. They dropped something tiny, possibly a case, as they passed under a light." Pooh's eyes widened. "Did you retrieve it?" he asked. "No, sir, I was too scared, but I can show you where very well lead," Miss Wilkins responded. Thomas led them to the starboard deck. After a brief search near the lifeboats, Pooh noticed a metallic gleam beneath a folded canvas. He lifted a silver cigarette case with the initials CH and a finer script, "To my beloved from V." Pooh's brow creased slightly. Clarence Harrow dismissed the idea of "who is this?" and focused on the hint at hand. Clarence Harrow, Captain Harrow, frowned and consented, taking the case in his gloved hands. Harrow claims he was in his cabin after 11 p.m., but this placed him near the crime scene at midnight. He wonders if it was an accident, a PUO, or an intentional attempt to mislead. Thomas shifted uneasily. "I don't know, sir. I simply saw it fall." Pooh's thoughts circled back. "Miss Wilkins, have you ever overheard Lady Vanessa address someone with a specific name or endearment?" Thomas nodded as she whispered to someone in the corridor, "My dear Amour." I assumed it was a pet name, Amour, for Amour. Pooh was a lover's pet name, which he kept mute while inclining his head to Mercy. "Miss Wilkins, you have been quite helpful. Please return to your quarters, but remain on the ship." As Pooh and Harrow returned to the upper decks, Thomas nodded with relief and slipped away. Pooh's mind raced. "We must walk carefully." Pooh warned Harrow that if he is guilty, he will be apprehensive. "Else he may be a target," Harrow responded silently, and Pooh remarked, "I will ponder this curious piece of the puzzle." They parted ways, leaving Pooh with his thoughts. The cigarette case's dual markings hinted to hidden depths. As the killer approached, the deception began to unravel. Chapter 7. The Hidden Section. The library on the SS Atlantica was a quiet, sophisticated space with leather-bound volumes and the scent of polished wood and aged paper. Hercule Poirot, the seeker of truth, was determined to uncover the ship's secrets one by one. He scanned every surface and paused before an antique writing desk. When his fingertip brushed against a little catch beneath the drawer, a slight click resonated through the stillness. A hidden compartment opened, showing a pile of letters tied with a tattered ribbon. Poirot's heart accelerated as he untied the ribbon and unfurled the first letter. His brows narrowed as he read the lovely looping script. "My dearest V, our time together is a stolen treasure. But I fear that if our secret is discovered, it would ruin us both. I can't bear to let you leave. Meet me in the normal place and we will decide." Pooh's moustache twitched with intrigue as he scanned through the remaining messages, each more fervent than the previous. However, none contained a full name, simply the initial A. As he sifted through the ship's passenger list, he wondered if it was Amelia Pennington, the reserved widow with a sharp tongue, Arthur Worthington, Sir Reginald's distant cousin, who had been conspicuously quiet, or someone less obvious lurking in the shadows of suspicion. A faint noise, like the shifting of weight on the wooden floor, broke the silence. Pooh's senses intensified. Poirot slipped the letters into his pocket and slowly turned, searching the room. The library appeared empty, and the shadows were undisturbed, but he knew there was someone there. He spoke out in a steady voice tinged with caution, and the stillness answered with tension. As Pooh approached the door, his polished shoes tapping in a methodical rhythm, he noticed a shadowy figure vanishing around the bend of the passage. His pulse accelerated as he thought the killer was watching him. Bolder. He hurried up the corridor, but the polished flooring gleamed under the dim lights. He paused and listened closely, but only heard the distant hum of the ship's engines. His resolve hardened. The killer's surveillance suggested that time was running out as he returned to the library. The letters revealed Lady Vanessa's secret lover and a motive of jealousy or betrayal, but the identity of the killer remained unknown. As Poirot extinguished the lamp and left the library, the ship's bell echoed through the halls. The stakes had never been higher than in Chapter 8. The S Atlantica pressed through a violent sea, its decks sparkling beneath a relentless downpour. The sky was heavy with grey clouds, and the rhythmic thud of waves against the hull highlighted the storm's severity. The smoking room was an island of tranquility, with polished wood walls and luxurious leather sofas shimmering softly in the lamplight Hercule. At 2 p.m., Poirot sat at a little table, his eyes fixed on the door, waiting for his next move in the delicate game of deduction. Mr. Pennington entered with his monocle swinging. Dr. Finch walked with a little stutter, clutching his medical bag tightly under his arm. He maintained a pleasant but controlling posture. "I appreciate your presence," he added, motioning to the seats. "We have an important topic to address." Pennington slid into a chair with a weary grunt. "Anything to help Muir. This affair has cast a cloud over us all." Dr. Finch remained on his feet with a patient expression. "Let us make this happen quickly." Pooh's lips curled into a slight smile. "It will be brief. I simply want to confirm, Missa. Arthur Worthington's activities in the Night Lady Vanessa met her demise." Pennington frowned while we played cards that night. "Arthur Finch and I had a round of whist. The game lasted until 11:30 p.m., according to Pennington. I went to bed when the brandy had worn off." Pooh switched his focus to Dr. Finch. "Did you also depart?" Finch paused, his fingers pounding against his bag. "Arthur and I talked till midnight or so," and Pooh's eyes narrowed. I needed precision. M. Finch shifted his weight, uneasy in his expression. "Arthur stepped out around 1:45, saying he needed air and would return in 10 minutes. When he returned, he was rattled, hands shaking and eyes darting to the door. He did not say anything unusual, but I did catch him talking to someone in the corridor before he returned. A woman in a black shawl. I couldn't see her face. Pooh's thoughts ignited a woman like the one Mrs. Harley saw near the incident. Doctor, you have been exceedingly merciful." Illuminating as the two men left Poirot, cobbled together the timeline. Arthur's absence from the smoking room coincided with the murder's window, adding a new thread to the tapestry of intrigue. Poirot returned to Vanessa's cabin, now locked under the captain's directive. The air still carried traces of jasmine and lavender. He moved to the wardrobe and discovered a torn slip of paper with the initials. In a hurried script, E.F. wondered if it was Lady Eleanor Fairfax, a poised widow with a fondness for lavender perfume who had kept a low profile since the voyage began. Poirot recalled her subtle tension whenever Vanessa's name arose as a clue worth pursuing. He sought her out on the upper deck, where she sat beneath an awning sipping tea as rain lashed the ship. Her smile tightened. Poirot greeted, dropping her cup, and asked, "What brought you into this storm?" "Madame, where were you when Lady Vanessa died?" Her grip on the cup tightened. "In my cabin reading. I retired early, as is my habit." Pooh's voice grew firm. "But a witness saw a woman like you near the first-class cabins at midnight." Lady Eleanor Fairfax's poise wavered. "But it's not what you think. Vanessa, a friend, wanted me to meet with her that night to discuss a private matter. She believed her husband was unfaithful. Eleanor asked for my advice, but when I arrived at her cabin, the door was open and I heard angry voices. I didn't walk in because I couldn't tell if it was a guy or a woman arguing about money. I left for fear of being seen." Paitu observed the tremor in her hands and the tear in her shawl, which matched the fabric found near Vanessa's body. She insisted that she dropped the note as a reminder of our meeting, but skepticism lingered. Her tale held water, but the torn shawl suggested a closer encounter with the crime before he could investigate further. A crewman raced onto the deck, breathless. "Captain Hargrove is concerned about the theft of the ship's logbooks from his office, which were discovered this morning. The crewman believes the killer is hiding something." Mercy Madame Poirot instructed Eleanor Rising to continue following the crewman below. Pooh's thoughts churned as the logbook tracked passenger movements. The theft of Vanessa's cabin screamed desperation, a sign that the murderer feared discovery. The storm outside roared louder, echoing the chaos in Pooh's mind. He vowed to assemble the clues. Chapter Hinyan. Forged Alibi. The SS Atlantica swayed softly on the waves as it approached the end of her voyage, yet within Hercule. Pooh's small quarters sparked a storm of deduction, and his desk became a battlefield of evidence. The evidence included a blackmail letter, a shredded photograph, a blood-stained handkerchief, and scrawled notes from his interrogation. Pooh's piercing gaze flew between them. His thoughts wrestled with the puzzle's elusive components. A sudden knock disrupted his focus. Jenkins, the steward, stood in the doorway. His expression ashen. "Miss Poirot, I've just remembered something concerning the logbook theft." Poirot leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Proceed." Jenkins fidgeted with his cap last night. "While dusting the captain's office, I noticed someone slip out just before the logbook disappeared. They wore a black cloak, but I caught a glimpse of a gold cufflink with a lion's head pattern." Pooh's breath caught a lion's head as he recalled an image from Vanessa's stateroom of a man with a peculiar cufflink, which he had seen glinting on Clarence Harrow's sleeve at dinner 2 nights previously. "Mercy Jenkins, you have given me a thread to draw with this new lead." Poirot addressed Captain Horrow for permission to search the suspect's rooms. Captain Horrow nodded with tension. "We dock in 2 days. If the killer slips away, we're finished," Captain Poirot said with serene certainty. In Clarence Harrow's cabin, Poirot meticulously examined a pile of ledgers detailing shipping investments. He discovered a torn page with jagged edges and incriminating text from the ship's logbook. The entries listed passenger movements on the night of Lady Vanessa's murder. Clarence Harrow left his cabin around 11:45 p.m., returning at 12:15 a.m. Sir Reginald Worthington's name was missing from his room between 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m., which was the time of the crime. Pooh grimaced at the 2 unaccounted-for suspects, but saw the stiff handwriting on the shredded page, unlike the official logbook script. He pocketed the page and went to the lounge, where Clarence Harrow was sipping brandy with a tight grip. Poirot approached him with a quiet but penetrating murmur. Harrow stated, "I discovered something curious in your cabin." Harrow's glass paused in mid-air. The captain permitted it. "The logbook page shows you near Vanessa's cabin when she died, despite your claim that you never left your room. I stepped out, but not to kill her. I was seeing someone for a confidential business matter, and they could vouch for you." Poirot said no. Harrow admitted his voice was low and private, but he did not harm Vanessa. When Pooh's eyes narrowed, Harrow swallowed hard and passed her cabin. She was arguing with Sir Reginald about money, and he threatened to cut her off if she didn't stop spending. Money was a powerful motivator. I repressed my thoughts because I didn't want to cause any trouble. Harrow responded, "But it's the truth. Reginald had reasons to want her dead." Poirot cocked his head. "Very good, Moore." After noting your words in his cabin, he placed the ripped page next to a sample of the official logbook stolen from the captain. His guess was correct. The handwriting was a fabrication, albeit not flawless. The strokes exposed an imitator, possibly to frame Harrow or cause confusion. Forging such a document is purer. As the ship's horn signaled the end of the evening, Mr. Billings, a precise man with access to the logbook, or a passenger with hidden talents, sprang to mind. The inadequacy of the alibi led to the discovery of the genuine logbook or forgery, revealing the identity of the murderer. Chapter 10. In his cabin, Hercule Poirot sat hunched over his notes, the soft glow of the desk lamp casting shadows across the page. The forged logbook page mocked his efforts to uncover the truth behind Lady Vanessa Worthington's murder, but Poirot knew that every lie concealed a kernel of reality, and it was his task to extract it with a decisive nod. Poirot closed his notebook and stood as the purer. After noticing Mr. Billings' uneasy manner, Poirot suspected he had the secret to the forgeries and confronted him while slipping on his coat. As Poirot entered the corridor, the ship's gentle sway reminded him of their isolation on the vast ocean. He passed Lady Helena Fairfax, who was engaged in a heated discussion with a fellow passenger near the lounge. Her sharp words cut through the air, and her flushed cheeks betrayed a woman under strain. Poirot filed the observation away and continued. Miss Poirot asked, "What can I do for you?" His voice trembled like a leaf in a storm. Poirot walked inside and closed the door softly. "Miss Billings, I believe you have information relevant to my research, specifically about the faked logbook page." Billings' eyes widened and he stumbled back a step. He stammered, but his hands betrayed him, fidgeting with the edge of his desk. He fixed him with a piercing gaze, his moustache twitching slightly. "The handwriting on the forged page is yours, and the freshly applied ink betrays its recent creation. You cannot deny the evidence of your own hand." He slumped into his chair, his shoulders sagging. "Upon them I had no choice," he muttered, barely heard over the ship's engines. "They threatened to expose my past, a mistake I made years ago, a foolish indiscretion I couldn't let ruin me." His tone was polite but firm. "What is their name?" Billings described a lion rampant with a sword as the signature on the notes left by Mr. Harrow and Reginald, which piqued Poirot's interest. However, Billings was unable to recognize the crest. Billings confessed his words, pouring out in a hurry. "I tore out the original page and hid it, but then the whole logbook was stolen, I swear." "That's all I know, thank you, miss." Billings. Poirot acknowledged your assistance and requested a search of your quarters for additional evidence. His tone softened slightly. Billings nodded, and Poirot entered the small cabin, which was cluttered with papers and personal effects. After a thorough search, Poe discovered a crumpled note hidden beneath a stack of ledgers. The note read, "Forge the entries as instructed or your secret will be revealed." The emblem at the bottom matched Billings' depiction of a lion rampant with a sword. Poirot pocketed the note and moved out of Billings' cabin. He nearly collided with Thomas Wilkins, a stowaway who appeared apprehensive and furrowed his brow with dread. Wilkin expressed an urgent desire to talk with Poirot, who gestured toward the deck and suggested a quiet area. They retired to a quiet corner near the lifeboats, where the sound of waves lapping against the hull provided a peaceful background. Wilkins took a deep breath as he began his investigation into Lady Vanessa. Sir Reginald suspected her of infidelity and sought evidence against her. Poe's eyes gleamed in the dark light as he inquired about what they discovered on the night of the murder. "Around midnight, I seen a man in a cloak leave the cabin area. Wilkin informed me that they had dropped a glove, which I picked up." He dug into his pocket and withdrew a lovely glove embroidered with the initials EF. Lady Eleanor's Poirot turned the glove over in his hands, wondering why she would leave it there. He suspected someone was trying to frame her. Wilkins mentioned that Lady Eleanor was playing cards with Mrs. Hartley in the lounge, but it couldn't have been her. Poirot nodded thoughtfully and thanked Miss Wilkins for her assistance in clarifying the new twist. Poe approached Lady Eleanor in the lounge, where she sat alone sipping tea, her serenity regained following her previous outburst with Madame Fairfax. Poe began bowing slightly. Lady Elena asked if she had lost a glove recently. Pooh showed her a glove found near the crime scene, but he suspected it was planted to incriminate her. She pressed her hand to her chest. Pooh's tone was reassuring yet firm, and he asked if she recognized the glove. Sir Reginald showed Eleanor the blackmail note and pointed to the Worthington family crest which he wears on his ring. Pooh's suspicions hardened, and the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. "Dear Madame, you have been the most cooperative," as he departed the lounge. The killer was a master manipulator, coercing Billings to forge the logbook, planting Lady Eleanor's glove to mislead, and using Sir Reginald's crest as a signature. However, why implicate Sir Reginald? Was this a subterfuge to avoid suspicion, or was Sir Reginald responsible for the murderous scheme? Peosa was on the verge of revealing the murderer's identity, but a crucial piece of evidence remained elusive. Peosa went to confront Sir Reginald, the guy whose crest was mentioned in the blackmail threat. The game was almost ended, and Hercule Poirot was prepared to make his move. In Chapter 11, the great lounge of the SS Atlantica gleamed with an unsettling splendor. Crystal chandeliers twinkled above, spilling light on velvet-draped walls. Beyond the tall windows, the Atlantic churned beneath a slate-gray sky, matching the tension within Hercule. The suspects sat in a semicircle of comfortable recliners as Poirot stood in the center of the room, exuding peaceful command despite his diminutive stature. Their faces gallery of emotions, apprehension and curiosity defiance. Captain Harrow stood near the door with his arms folded, gaze locked on the group of Sir Reginald Worthington and Lady Eleanor Fairfax. Clarence Harrow, Mr. Billings, Thomas Wilkins and other passengers expressed their emotions through body language, such as Sir Reginald's tight stance and Lady Eleanor's restless hands. Harrow maintained a casual demeanor, straightened his moustache and began speaking with a steady and exact tone. The murder of Lady Vanessa Worthington was not a random act, but a crime of intent. The culprit is among us. To uncover the truth, we must examine the clues which betray the killer's hand. He paced deliberately, his polished shoes clicking on the park floor. The first clue is a letter found in Lady Vanessa's stateroom. Pay what you owe, otherwise the world will know your disgrace, which you cannot disguise. Initially perceived as a threat, it was later shown to be her own handwritten composition, meant for Muir. Harrow, she tried to warn him to expose their affair or incur the consequences. Pooh's keen eyes searched the room, stopping on Sir Reginald, whose jaw tightened next to a photograph of Lady Vanessa with a man at a Paris café. The man's face was concealed, but a lion's head cufflink displayed on his sleeve matched Muir's, the footprint near the stateroom door. Too small for a man and too large for Lady Vanessa, may have been a distraction left by a crew member or placed by the killer to deceive Poirot. The open porthole with a jar on a chilly night suggested an intruder or a need to cool the room after a struggle. Another misdirection. His gaze focused on Lady Eleanor. The handkerchief with Madame Fairfax's initials was a smart plant, but the blood belonged to Miss Harrow. Harrow tensed as Poirot turned to him. "You cut yourself during the struggle with Lady Vanessa Muir. The bandage on your hand indicates that the blood on the handkerchief is yours and was used to frame." Elena, Madame Fairfax, gasped as she wondered how he got my handkerchief. Pooh's lips twisted slightly. "You dropped it in the lounge, madam." Monsieur Harrow claimed it later, stained it with his blood to shift suspicion. Harrow's composure deteriorated as he tightened his hands. He pondered the cigarette case with the inscription, "CH unto my beloved A from V," found near the lifeboats, which connected him to the incident. However, this was not his primary motive. Harrow Pooh's eyes twinkled with knowledge. Thomas Wilkins, a stowaway, recalled Vanessa referring to her lover as "my dear amore," which is French for love. This was her pet name for you. Harrow concealed the letters from her husband in the library, among forgotten volumes. The room became silent as the weight of revelation settled on them. Harrow's face paled. The forged log-book page implicating you and Sir Reginald was a desperate attempt to cover your tracks. You obtained it by stealing Sir Reginald's signet ring from his cabin and using it to seal your forgery. When the original logbook threatened to expose your movements, you stole it and used a crumpled blackmail note stamped with Sir Reginald's crest. Captain Harrow stepped forward. "Harrow, is this true?" Harrow's voice trembled with fury, stating that he loved her and would never hurt her. He then explained the glove. Poirot planted evidence around the scene, including a handkerchief and threatening message, to implicate Lady Eleanor. "You can't hide forever" was not her draft alone. You sent her a final warning, thinking she might expose the voices. Madame Fairfax overheard Harrow and Vanessa arguing before the murder. He shattered his resolve, claiming it was an accident. He tried to stop her, but she fought and he didn't mean to. He sank back and sobbed as Captain Horse signaled his officers to take him away. Poirot faced the group, his tone solemn. Greed and fear fueled the tragedy, but justice prevailed. He bent his head and said, "Thank you, Poirot. I suspected, but couldn't believe it. The heart resists what the mind discerns, but the truth endures." The passengers drifted away. As Poirot stayed by the window, the sea calmed and the storm abated. He restored order with a flick of his moustache and the peaceful confidence of genius Hercule. Poirot lays out the truth, restoring harmony in the SS. Atlantica, the riddle is complete. The culprit has been unmasked. Order is restored, thanks to the keen observation of one exceptional mind. We hope you enjoyed this exquisite dance of deduction. To learn more about midnight stories and mysteries, try joining our YouTube membership program for unique video, or visiting our Bouya Coffee page. Link in description.